I found this garden angel in this lump of limestone, which I dug out of the ground. It was a step up to the level of the lawn at the back of my house. I leaned it up against the wall and I looked at it and wondered what was in it. Eventually, one summer, when an accomplished stone carver and artist, Caroline Mackenzie, went to India, I asked to borrow her stone carving tools while she was away. And then I sat down and made a drawing. And this is what came out of the stone. She, or he, is a garden or guardian angel smiling over the garden. The wings, either side and at the back, were inspired by a remarkable semi-relief carving in Italy on the front of an 11th century church in Parma, showing the scene of angels gently lowering the figure of Christ from the cross. But I discovered, in turn, those angels are a copy of centuries older Hittite carvings from eastern Turkey. Well, she or he is blessing us and the garden, which, as you can see, is blessed with a remarkable tree called a clerodendron. Well, angels are messengers of God. Many people have claimed to see them. I never have. But I love the mythology about mysterious visitors bringing blessings and divine messages. Most of us know about those sort of things and have been blessed by human angels caring for us. The wings attributed to them probably derived from Greek mythology, and in particular from Hermes, otherwise known in Latin or Greek, Eros, the messenger of the gods. Well, what I try to do when making wood carving is to obey the prompting of the wood. A friend let me have a rather rotten piece of laburnum which was falling down. This came from a larger chunk. Laburnum is characterized, rather like yew wood, by a white outer layer of sapwood and a rich dark brown heartwood with a lovely grain. Well, I retained the curiously shaped left side as the outer part of the wing and used the white wood on the right to depict the left-hand wing, or his or her left-hand wing, curling round the body protectively. The Christian story is peppered with angels. In our church of St. James the Greater in Leicester, we have 365 of them at the last count, and none more so than at Christmas time. That story really begins, of course, 9 months earlier, when an actual named angel, Gabriel, visited, as the story goes, a young woman. My next carving is possibly an illustration, but it was not conceived as such. The wood for it came from the stump of a yew tree in my rectory garden. I realized that the originally white sapwood of the outer part of the tree under the bark, with its wonderful natural curve, would make a fine pair of wings. The figure of the young woman was inspired by the shape of a young yoga teacher, which I had sketched after a yoga session. As I removed the wood and created the inside curvature of the wings, I realized I could actually play with the grain until it looked right. The difference between the sapwood and the heartwood is marked with a dark line. Interestingly enough, a rusty gas pipe ran under the roots of the tree. The iron oxide from this was leached upwards with the sap, and I've used this natural line to define the sleeve of the angel as well. So it was originally just an angel and a young woman, but when people saw it, they said, "Oh, it is the Annunciation of the angel Gabriel to the Blessed Virgin Mary." And of course it can be that as well, but I prefer the simple truth of a divine messenger gently addressing a young woman. I have been greatly inspired by the work of Peter Eugene Ball. Well, you can see his sculptures in many cathedrals and churches. Years ago, I couldn't resist his lovely sculpture of the Virgin and Child, and I bought it. Peter Ball has this unique style. He collects interesting bits of old timber. In this case, a piece of charred marine timber from the seashore, complete with a few barnacles. Then he carves a head, glues it on, and employs a secret method to cover it with a thin sheet of metal. Well, I've never found out actually how he does it. In this case, he uses copper. And he allows it then to be weathered to give it a greenish tinge. And he gives her a halo in gold leaf. Here, as a result, is a beautifully contemplative sculpture, cleverly suggesting the mother's embrace. The appropriate gospel verse at the end of St. Luke's story of the birth of Jesus is this: "But Mary treasured all these words and pondered them in her heart." Pondered them. Of course, none of this Christmas story would have been remembered if Jesus had not gathered 12 men around him, taught and healed and preached and prophesied, and then been arrested, tortured and crucified, and then, astonishingly, been raised from death. I'm so astonished by this claim that I'm trying to carve a version of a famous icon image of the resurrection of Jesus. Artists often provide a deeper insight into things which cannot be explained in words. If the resurrection of Jesus actually happened, then no one was around to record an eyewitness account, as it must have begun inside the tomb. The only evidence we have of the resurrection of Jesus is in the accounts in the Gospels, which are quite mysterious and tantalizing. Indeed, I would go so far as to say that there is no really hard evidence except in the lives of the women and men who know he is alive and dwelling in their hearts and minds. And the collective noun for them is the Church, past, present and future.